news for some of you is this lesson's done lying on your back for the whole thing. Unless you want to rest lying on your stomach, of course. That's your option. So, have a lie down on your back. And just check in. We've been doing all these lessons, thinking about flexion and extension. And what's your sense in yourself as you lie on the floor about the state of your extensors at the back, length there? How long you feel on the floor, how spread you are on the floor. And what about your flexors, which are mostly at the front of you? And do you have any sense of your length at the front, your width at the front? So if you had to kind of choose which side of you, the back of you or the front of you, feels a little longer and wider, what would it be for you at the moment? And it might be different on one side compared to the other, given what we've been doing with that FI practice, or it might not. So with your arms lying on the floor, can you turn your palms up so that you can curl your fingers and open them again, like we've been doing with one hand. We're doing it now with two hands. Just curl your fingers and open them again, curl them and open them. So this is a movement of flexion of your fingers, and then the opening is extending. So can you do that a little faster? And it's just your fingers curling in towards your palm and then opening out again. Can you do that a little faster? And a little faster again. So how quickly could you do it without losing the quality of that movement? So still feeling that all your fingers are curling and opening, curling and opening. Dum, 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 dum. Quickly, 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 quickly. That's it. And go as fast as you can there. Lightly but quickly. And that's so it doesn't have to be a big movement. The faster you do it, of course, the smaller you're going to do it. That's it. With these quick movements of your fingers, keep them going. And could you start to move your feet in a similar timing and see what do they do without thinking about it? Just do, 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 do. What do they choose to do without thinking, without stopping to think? That's it. And can you feel what's happening? So it's quite tricky. You've got, now your elbows aren't bending. It's just your fingers, and you're moving your feet, your ankles and your toes. And you find that somehow you come into a rhythm with your fingers and your feet. And actually looking around, it's remarkable how most of you are doing a similar thing. So then, without stopping this, can you just slow it down enough that you can feel what you're doing, what your feet are doing in time with your hands? Or you might, if that's tricky, you can kind of freeze frame it for a second, go, whoop, where am I here? Where are my fingers? Where are my feet? And then come back to doing it quickly again. Can you feel that there's a correlation between, what is it? Curling your fingers? What happens with your feet when you're curling your fingers? And what happens with your feet when you uncurl your fingers? Can you tell? And then just slow it down again. So you're still doing exactly the same pattern of movement, but a little slower with your hands and your feet. And see now. It can sometimes take a little bit of time to really figure out what you're doing here. And what I can see most of you doing is that as your fingers curl, your feet are moving up towards you. So your ankles are doing that movement that we would call dorsiflexion anatomically. And when your fingers are opening, you're taking your feet away from you into what's called plantar flexion. And Feldenkrais wanted, he came at this idea of what are flexors and what are extensors. So it's nice and simple, nice and clear with your fingers. Can you feel that? This curling of your fingers is flexion. But how do we know what's happening? What do we call flexion when it comes to our feet? So this is one way that he was giving us to feel this connection, that this movement of our feet up towards our shins, he would call flexion. Because it fits with this, we instinctively do it at the same time as this curling of our fingers. No? Did I say the wrong thing? Curling, your feet come up towards you as you're curling your fingers. For most of you, that's what's happening. It might feel different, or you might be doing it differently. So you could try both ways. That's interesting. So you're curling your toe. Okay. So let's slow it down again, and let's have a look at what's happening in your feet. We'll just separate this out again. So when you're doing a movement, now that we've got this general idea, we're exploring this idea of flexors and extensors. So can you do a movement in your feet, which is curling your toes and pulling your feet up towards you a little bit? So you curl your toes and you bend your ankles, and then as you take them the other way, as you take your feet away from you, you let your toes open out. Okay, so just try that. It may be what you were doing, or it might be not what you were doing. So just feel that you can curl your toes. It's almost like that you're pulling something with your toes towards you. Now, and let it go. It's a weird combination of in your feet and your toes and your ankle, or a weird combination with your hands. Yeah. And we're not all organised the same. So the other way that Feldenkrais looked at flexors and extensors is in this really functional way of thinking that, in general, extensors are what's going to take us away from the floor if we're in a standing position. Flexors are anti-gravity. Extensors are anti-gravity. And flexors bring us down, fold us. So just keep playing with this. Yeah? This curling of your fingers, moving of your feet, and speed up again, slow down again. When I'm thinking about feet and toes and flexion and extension, I'm thinking of little babies when they're all curled up in that early stage of life. What are their feet and their toes doing? They're not pointing like ballerinas, that's for sure. Come back. Dong, 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 dong. Speed it up again, see what happens. And we're going to explore this in lots of ways. So there's, we don't have to get too caught up at the moment. Give yourself a little rest. And then can you bend your elbows so that your forearms are vertical, your elbows are on the floor, and that's it. Your hands are towards the ceiling. And then turn your hands so that your palms are facing towards your feet and your legs are still long. That's it. So your palms are so your elbows are bent at 90 degrees and your forearms are vertical. Yep. And your fingers are towards the ceiling. And then, so if you looked, you could see the back of your hands and your palms would be facing towards your feet. So you could see the back of your hands, the palms would be facing towards your feet. Good. And then start to curl and uncurl your fingers in this position. Just your fingers, so not moving your wrists. You're just curling your fingers and then opening. Just your fingers, not your wrists. That's it. So it's just a really simple little, so your fingers are coming down and then opening. That's it. And it's a soft little movement. And then see in this position, how would it be to, at the same time as your fingers curl, if you curl your toes and bring your feet towards you at the same time as your fingers curl. And then, that's it. So your wrists are in like a neutral position. They're just, so they don't have to, your palms don't have to face the floor. They're sort of facing the wall in front of you. Yep. Good, good. So see now, if you think about combining this curling of your fingers with a pulling up, curling your toes and bringing your feet towards you at the same time, and just play with that idea slowly enough that you can feel what it's like to do both of those at the same time. And notice whether you are curling your toes and uncurling your toes. So as your feet go up, your toes are curling. That's it. And then they uncurl as your feet move away from you. Curling and coming up, and then that's it. It's tricky, isn't it, to know what you're doing sometimes. So now, once you've got that, can you start to go faster again? Just speed it up slowly and see if you still keep that connection of these two movements. The movement of your fingers curling and uncurling, and the movement of your toes curling and coming up towards you and uncurling and moving away from you. And then can you go a little faster and a little faster and a little faster? Yep. And see if your feet and your hands stay together. as you speed up, or does something happen to that pattern, that correlation, once you get faster? And then let it go and have a little rest. That's it. Julie was talking yesterday about how the other thing about flexes, especially in our fingers, is that we can move very quickly with them. So we're playing around with that speed of that flexion of our fingers, seeing what happens in our feet. And if our fingers and our feet are doing that, what's happening in the rest of us? Okay. So come back to doing that so that you've got your hands in that position and you're curling and uncurling your fingers and you're bringing your toes curled up towards you at the same time as your fingers curl, and then letting them all go open and long at the same time. That's it. So your hands and your feet are doing this movement together. You can start slowly so that you can keep track of that movement. And notice whether one foot seems to have a bit of trouble with this. If one foot's easier than the other, if one hand's easier than the other. And then can you start to speed it up again? And see, do you still keep that pattern of your feet? So just goes faster, faster, faster until you're going as quickly as you can. And can your feet keep up with that? Do you lose this somewhere along the line? When you're going fast, you can go smaller as well. So you don't have to make it a big, that's it. But you want your toes and your ankles to be moving. Okay. Now, without stopping, so keep going with that, keep going with that. And could you see if you can change the pattern without stopping? So keep your feet going, keep your hands going, and see if you can start to have one hand opening as the other closes. Okay, so you're changing the pattern of your hands. Yep. And just see what happens with your feet. Yeah? So your hands are alternating. What's happening with your feet? So there's all sorts of things going on, which you would expect, yeah? So there's some, just so notice, are your feet going together at the same time, or are they alternating as well? If they're going together, are they going with your right hand or your left hand? If they're alternating, how are they alternating? So just see, is it possible to go with your hands doing this alternating? Can your feet stay the same? This lesson is serious. It's like the rubbing your tummy and patting your head a little bit. So we're just exploring all of the options here. When your hands, and can you breathe? And can you not grit your teeth? And can you let the rest of you stay as soft as possible so that yeah. All right. And you can give yourself a little rest there. Well done. This is a little brain scrambling one. Okay. So Feldenkrais also talked about flexors and extensors in terms of the speed that they contract at. And he was saying that it's very kind of for chickens to create different coloured meat for us to understand flexors and extensors. I cooked a turkey for the first time ever for Christmas this year. So I can vouch for the fact that the breast of the turkey, where they flap their wings quickly, is a different colour to the legs of the turkey, which are holding them up. Yeah, you've got this, so different types of fibres in the muscles. And people used to talk about the red fibres and the white fibres, and that muscles were specifically one or the other, but it's not that simple. But there is this difference in what we use our flexors and extensors for. So come back to that position of your elbows being bent up, your hands facing your feet, and just come back to flexing both hands at the same time and see what's happening in your feet now. So just do the thing with your hands and see what's happening with your feet now. And do it quickly, so you're not thinking too much. So you're not trying to get it right. That's it. So just go quickly. So both hands are together, and see what your feet do. And that's it. See what's happening now. And if you need to slow it down a little bit to feel that, you can do that, and then go fast again. And then, without changing what you're doing, can you shift your attention specifically to your feet? So now your feet are driving this movement, if you like. They're the main focus. And we'll see what your hands do. So if you think of your feet doing that curling of your toes and coming up towards you, what do your hands do? Once your feet have got that pattern, and how quickly can your feet do this? Can you go fast with your feet without losing this pattern of toes and ankles together? Can you include your toes in this? So some people like moving their toes more, some people like moving their ankles more. See if you can include your toes and your ankles. You can slow it down if you lose the pattern there, and then come back and speed it up a bit and slow it down. So your toes are curling as you bring your feet towards you. And for some people, that's just not a logical thing to think about doing. So just check what you're doing. When your feet are towards you, are your toes curled or are they extended? So see. And that's it. So keep thinking, and then driving it from your feet and your ankles, just nice and quick, 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 and see what your hands do. So when the movement focus is on the movement of your feet, how do your hands fit into that? That's it. Okay, so keep going with that. If you're okay to keep going, or do you want to have a rest? Have a rest. Have a rest. And you can rest in any position you like. You could roll onto your tummy if you like, or onto your side, or stay on your back, whatever you want to do. But we are going to come back fairly quickly and do a little bit more. Okay, so do you feel like you've got these two things fairly clear, the curling and uncurling of your fingers, and then what's happening in your feet? Yeah. So when you're ready, you can come back onto your back and bring your hands into the arms into that same position. And this time, can you just have your fingers and your feet just doing everything together for starters. Yeah, that's it. And see now, when your fingers are going together, what are your feet doing? Go quickly so you don't think too much. That's it. And then, without stopping, can you now start to alternate your feet? So there'll be a little glitch there while you readjust, and take your feet one up, one down, one up, one down, and see what happens to your hands. So again, is there a difference between your 2 feet? Is it easier to think of one than the other? And what's happening with your hands? So think of your feet, get the rhythm of your feet. Yeah. And then notice, are your hands alternating? Are they going the same way? Are they going? And again, it's tricky to know, isn't it? So just do whatever you're doing, and then at some point just stop and see which foot's up, which foot's down, which fingers are open, which fingers are closed, and then keep going again. Yeah? So you're just like doing a little, and can you tell which foot is up without looking at it? So how do we know what we're doing? Okay, so keep your feet alternating. Keep your feet alternating. And then while your feet are alternating, can you bring your hands to flex at the same time and open at the same time? While your feet are alternating, can you flex and extend your fingers at the same time as each other? So your hands are doing the same thing. Your hands are doing the same thing, and your feet are going one up, one down. And and what's happened to the timing of it? Because I can see a few people doing what I did, which was your hands are going double time to what your feet are doing, which is one solution, yeah? Because then every time you've got one foot up, your fingers are curled. So see if you can just see what happens. So alternate your feet and see if your fingers can go the same together. So your fingers, right and left fingers are going curling and opening at the same time as your feet alternate, and see what does this feel like for you. How's it going? It's doing your head in? Okay. So then just continue with that, with alternating your feet, and let your hands do whatever they like. So without stopping. So just alternate your feet and let your hands come into whatever pattern they want to do. And there's all sorts of things going on, of course. Okay. And then that's it. Go a little faster. You're not thinking. So just let those feet alternate, alternate, alternate. That's it. And you can let your hands do whatever they want to do now. What do they do? Do they stay with each other? Do they start to alternate with your feet? And if they're alternating, sometimes they just keep changing. If your hands are alternating, which combination are you using? So again, just freeze it for a second and see. Yep. And then go back to doing it. Then freeze it for a second and see. And go back to doing it. So what I can see, and don't worry if this is not you, but what I can see for a lot of people is that they're flexing opposite hand and foot at the same time and extending opposite hand and foot at the same time. So just see if that would make sense to you to try that pattern. You can go slowly for starters. So what we're saying is this is flexion, that's extension, flexion, extension. Does that make sense? So we're saying flexion is curling your toes and bending your ankles, and extensions lengthening your toes and pointing your feet away from you. So it's like you can imagine that your feet are just grasping onto something and pulling towards you. That's it, without gritting your teeth, without tightening your jaw. Keeping on breathing. Oh, that's it. And see if whatever you're doing, does it connect through the rest of you? Or are you just thinking feet and hands? So whatever pattern you're using now, that's it. See if you can, if anything happens in your trunk, if anything happens in your pelvis, if anything happens in your head. So some people actually look like they're walking or running as they're lying on the floor. Climbing a ladder, yeah. That's true. All right. So have one more little rest. Okay. And then one last time. Can you bend your elbows so your hands are in the air, your palms are facing your feet? And can you flex your hands together? So right and left hands flexing together, and find that pattern. Nice and easy, light, soft. That's it. And whilst your hands are doing that, can you alternate the movement of your right and left foot? So without changing your hands, can you bring your right and left foot into an alternating pattern? That's it. See how that feels. Is it just your hands and your feet? What happens through the middle of you? What happens to your breathing, to your brain, to your jaw? That's it. And then go a little faster with that. Hands going together, feet alternating. Okay. And then continue to do that. Continue to alternate your feet. So it's coming from your feet. Bring your feet into. So then shift your attention to your feet, alternate your feet, and just see what happens to your hands. So alternate your feet and see what starts to happen with your hands. You can go quickly or slowly, but really have the feeling that your feet are alternating and your hands stay together, or do they change? Okay. And then let it go. Let it go. And just lie here for a minute and Just have a sense of what it feels like at the back of you. A sense of the length and the width at the back as you rest on the floor. What's happening in your lower back, your neck. And then think about the front surface of you. How open are your hips, your chest? And then if you can start to come up from the floor and just notice how you do that. As you come up, what's your initial movement? Do you go to flex? Do you go to extend? Do you turn? Do you side bend? What's your strategy there? How easy is it to come up? Can you stay down, Mia? I want to get all right. Okay. And when you're up, I'm just going to get you to have a look at Mia, who was doing the most beautiful ladder climbing and and walking while she was lying down. So for those of you who are still a little confused, do you feel okay to show us? Yeah. So alternating your feet, that's it. And then that's it. And then start to alternate your hand. Yeah. And can you feel how this is going all the way through? It's just like this beautiful, yeah, head's moving, everything's coming in. What's that? Hang on. What? Yep. Well, it's like a little loose, but yes, there were a few. Can you curl your toes a little bit because you were doing it, and then when we loosened it all up, it was like, and plus everybody's looking at her, so I've made her freak out. Yeah. That's that with your feet. It's curling. Impossible for you? You had to do it with your jaw. Okay. So now just notice how you're standing. And Mia, you can come up. You've done a beautiful job. Huh? You feel great? Isn't it interesting? So this is... All right. And what feels different? Okay. So has anything changed in the rest of you from doing this weird thing with your hands and your feet? That's the question. Why would Feldenkrais get us to do all this apart from frustrating us and, tightening our jaw for some of us? What can you... Okay. Yeah. So some people... Hamstrings, yeah. So people will feel it in different places, yeah? Yeah. So maybe it's the places that tend to take. If you tend to be a flexor, does it lengthen your flexors a little? If you tend to be a bit more in extension, can you feel there's a little bit more length there? That's the question. Or is it something totally different for you? So